every track day, someone walks up to the wing, not me, and says, wow, that's a big wing, or that's a nice wing, or it just looks cool. And the inspiration wasn't to look cool. It was essentially to get the most downforce possible in a streetable package. So I'm doing a series on my mods, and this is going to be the episode on the big bits. So that's the wing and the splitter. And we are going to talk about why I selected these choices and kind of like the rationale behind them and what makes them so good or bad. If you're interested in the build sheets, I have a link in the description. That's trackdaydiaries.com/build. And it has every single thing I've done to this car. I think, go find out. And if this helps, please like and subscribe, and let's get right into it. So just how streetable is this car, or just how much downforce does this car make? I cannot answer both of those questions. Those are very subjective questions, I guess. Maybe not one. Maybe not all of them are subjective. However, for streetability, it is as streetable as a bump or a curb will let you have it. As far as downforce goes, I think this makes the most downforce out of any kits in its size. Like, I'm pretty sure of that. The keyword being in its size. The only exception would probably be the Zebulon front splitter. So let's start with the wing, since that's what a lot of people like or notice initially, although the splitter, which comes later, is actually more interesting. So the first thing you notice about the wing is that it's pretty big. It's 14-inch chord, and it's relatively wide, but it's not as wide as, possible. For example, it's 72 inches wide, it's 14-inch chord, and that's an extremely big span of area. And I did this on purpose. I essentially wanted the biggest wing possible because as far as streetability goes, having a bigger wing doesn't really impact much. It can maybe block your view more, but all it does is give you more flexibility later down the line when you want to make more front downforce. I think front downforce tends to kill streetability, but if your goal is more downforce, you're just gonna have to make a sacrifice somewhere. So for the wing, I just got the biggest physical wing I could get, and then the wing kit lets you kind of choose whatever. Like, I think AJ Hartman has like fulcrum this, fulcrum that, apex this, whatever. You can choose your wing width, you can choose your wing chord. In my case, I just went with the biggest one I could get. That is single element. And the reason I did this is because I wanted more flexibility later on. One, I knew I was going to make a lot of downforce in the front as well. And so I needed the ability to have everything in a single foil package. I don't make a lot of power relative to the amount of downforce. So you might ask, why did I go with a single airfoil over like double? I think drag is a big answer to that. When you have double airfoil, you have more downforce, but you just have more drag, way more drag. So your drag to downforce ratio is just not optimal, or just not in your favor unless you have really crazy horsepower. So a lot of other people also make wings. Why did I go with this one specifically? Well, a couple of reasons. It's made of carbon fiber, so it's light, and this is pretty much the highest point of the car. So it matters that it's light. For me, I value trunk space because I'm driving myself to the track and back. And so I needed something that does not impede the trunk. So when it comes to making high downforce on like the C8s, for example, so you have a couple of mounting options. You can extend the mounting arms to the back and then have it chassis mounted to the back of the car. You can mount it to where the Z06 wings are placed. You can mount it on the deck lid. You can mount it in the trunk. You can mount it how this is currently mounted. I think, one, this is the coolest way it could possibly be ever mounted. But the issues with the other options are, all the other options have some kind of sacrifice, either aesthetics or functionality. So if you're mounting it out through the back, then you're extending the length of your car, essentially. And again, for streetability reasons, maybe, it's not that big of a deal, but I don't have a big garage. I'm always at the limit, and I already have a long splitter, so I don't want to extend the car any further. If you mount it on the deck lid, for the amount of downforce that this makes, you're going to need some reinforcements, which is where the pylons that come from the floor of the trunk help with the stability, but then they restrict the amount of stuff you can put in your trunk. I think this only matters, again, if you put stuff in your trunk, right? So like if you live in the Midwest, you have a ton of space, you have a truck and a trailer and all that. It's great because you can just, you don't care about all these options, right? But when you're space limited, as I am, you start to care about, efficiency. And then I think the final option, which did not work, is the Z06 locations. One, this is not a Z06, and I don't know if I trust a Z06 retrofit to properly hold the amount of downforce that this wing is going to produce, because the GM guys didn't design, a 14-inch wing, right? So this is pretty much, I wouldn't say my only option, but this is how I narrowed it down to this option. And then the second benefit is with this option, or with this wing setup, you don't need to drill into the deck lid, which can help with resale value later on. You do need to make some sacrifices, so it's not like, you can take it off and then it's going to be like it was never there. However, you don't need to drill a hole. And I think drilling a hole is just like the most prohibitive selling prohibition. I don't know. So how does it work? Well, we have this locking pin over here, and we have a hinge on the other side, and it kind of just goes straight through into the chassis brace or the engine brace on both sides. And it is connected again, like down there. And you can see it has a quick release pin just to unlock and hinge the entire wing forward. A lot of people tend to think that this hydraulics is for DRS. However, sadly, it is not for DRS. Now, installation was definitely a pain. Although I think with time, like I've done it once or twice, it got, a little bit better. However, I can't imagine a worse installation for any wing of the C8s. Let's just say that. However, once you get it down, I think it's all good. So looking closer at the wing itself, you can see that it has quite a lot of adjustments, which is always great. You can see the wear pattern here showing that I definitely use those adjustments. And then another thing that it has is the gurney flap. So this allows you to get that extra bit of downforce at the cost of some drag, but downforce. And this is my end plates. The end plates that came with this car are not as big, and they don't stick out as much. And I think I might actually swap these back for those, or make smaller ones. See that I made it a nice shiny purple. But yeah, I think that's pretty much the wing. It looks cool from pretty much all angles. One more thing to say is you want to be maybe cautious of the kit/package you have if you want to use this to compete. So some people, like some orgs, care about like the dimensions of the wing. So obviously don't buy like a 14 chord wing when you want to compete in an org that says 11 chord wing. And then some orgs care about the distance from like the car, the distance to like the mirrors and stuff like that. So essentially just understand what you're getting into before you get into them. You will notice that there is no splitter here today, and that's because the splitter said deuces. I only point this out to make it known that even though streetability is a big concern or factor in this build in general, in order to make front downforce, you have to make sacrifices. And, because you can't just, you could, but you can't just put like a big wing in front, that makes your front downforce, and then you have great downforce. You need to make your front downforce more subtly. Generally, your front downforce tends to be your limits, in the sense that most people or most cars can make more rear downforce than front downforce. And so when it comes to your downforce limitations, you're better off figuring out how much your front makes and then trying to balance it out with the wing. My philosophy building this car was, again, get the biggest wing possible, and then maybe don't make as much downforce initially, but eventually I'm going to make more downforce in the front, and I don't want to have to change my wing. So, you can just work your way up that way. I'm going to talk about the canards at a different time, but yes. No matter how streetable you want your car to be, if you want to make good front downforce, you need a big splitter. And unless you have some SF90 Ferrari that has, factory Aero tunnels or something like that, you're not going to make big front downforce unless you have a big splitter, and a big splitter requires some sacrifices. So even in its streetable form, this splitter easily catches on the ground, basically if you're not on like smooth track, and it easily rips off. Luckily, it doesn't damage the actual car. It doesn't damage the splitter completely. You can still repair it, as I did in some other video. However, it is still a risk because when you want to make a lot of front downforce, you just need to make some sacrifices. It's just how it is. But yet, I still think this is the coolest splitter setup I have ever seen on any car, on any street track car at least. And that's because it has a couple of features that just make it better than the competition. So generally, bigger is better with splitters. I don't think there's any arguments there. And by bigger, I mean an extension either forward or backwards. So, you know, the more the splitter is flat from the start of the car forward gives you just more downforce. And that's like a big streetability issue. But also, the more it extends rearwards, it also gives you more downforce because the air is just smoother and it's able to be attached under the car. This is how big this splitter looks, and it looks like a normal splitter, although it has some secret sauce. One is that it's customizable, so you can increase or decrease the length of the front splitter extension. And in my case, I think I got a 3-inch. I'm gonna get a 4-inch next time, but 5.5 inches is the biggest, and that's almost half a feet of extension. So in that way, you can kind of customize your own threshold of how much do I want to sacrifice driving daily and having a big stick out? How much do I want to make more downforce? You know, so you're not making like 2x the downforce if you go from like 3 inches to like 6 inches, but it might be the difference between never driving a car and driving a car like once a month, you know? So that's the trade-off that you're gonna have to make. I think my personal opinion is, so 3 inches worked really well for me. It still really hampers your streetability. However, it's better than a 5 or 6 inch extension splitter, which I would absolutely never drive. I have a bump both ways leaving, like every way leaving my house. I have to, you know, angle the car leaving every driveway, and this is with 3 inches. So I can't imagine having to deal with anything more. And then the second secret sauce with this splitter is it has these compressible rods. Now, the compressible rods, although they look pretty bad here, the function is, imagine this is the splitter and this is the chassis on the other side. When you hit a bump or you hit the ground, which happens pretty often when you have a splitter, it compresses, right? And so you have like, you know, maybe half an inch or an inch of extra clearance when you hit the ground that you wouldn't otherwise have if you had a stiff mount. This makes it such that you don't have to worry so much about your low clearance when you're on track, maybe hitting the ground, because it just has some give, right? And then the best part about this is you can lock it in the up position or in like a street mode when you're in the street. So that's what I do. I drive to the track, take out the pins, it drops about an inch, and then I just have more downforce. I can't stress how smart this is when you're designing like an object, just making it have the ability to be just better for like both uses, right? There's no real drawback to this. It's not any less strong of a device. You can see that this guy is still intact. In fact, this is what gave. The only drawback I can see with this is I just wish this was black. So like, you know, it doesn't look like a beaver is like sticking out the mouth of the car. But other than that, this is like, you know, great technology. But we're not done. This splitter has even more tricks up the sleeve. So if you're watching this video and you don't know that you should round the leading edge of your splitter, well, now you know. This definitely does that. So if you made a splitter out of wood, for example, you would have to maybe sand off the bottom edge, perhaps the top edge, I don't know. But you basically have to sand it off just to make your splitter more efficient, make attachments just more likely. This already does that for you. This is made out of carbon fiber. And I'm not trying to sell the splitter here, I'm just saying why I picked this one. This is made out of carbon fiber. The reason why I brought that up is because if anything ever happens to the splitter, like, you know, let's say you go off and you know it comes off, it's happened to me multiple times, and I don't think I've ever seen anybody else's splitter take the amount of damage that this one has and survive. And when I say survive, I mean this thing is in one piece. It does not want to break. And so what that gives me the opportunity to do is to repair it, right? So this is not stock. I made this on a different video, right? This is like one of the repairs that I did where this kind of ripped out, and I just like made a different puck, put it in there, slapped some carbon on the top and the bottom, and, you know, boom, splitter is done. So if I had a wood splitter, it would be a lot harder for me to repair it. I wouldn't even repair it. I would just make a new one. I'm making a new anything is just harder than repairing what you already have, especially when it's wood and especially when it doesn't have a lot of the features that this one has. But once again, I'm not done. This has one more feature that is really, really cool. And I think this is maybe the biggest reason why I bought the splitter. And if you know anything about Aero, you understand that the reason that you have lift or downforce is because the air has to move a longer distance on one side than the other side. And so the air has to speed up on the longer distance side. So in downforce's case, it's speeding up on the bottom. And because it's speeding up, Bernoulli's principle, blah, 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 you get some suction or some lift, right? And the opposite happens on a plane. The point I'm trying to make here is when you curve your surface, you speed up the air, which gives you more downforce. And imagine if you could have a wing under the car, which kind of helps you get this effect. So one way to do this is to use splitter diffusers. You've seen splitter tunnels, splitter diffusers. They take the air, it angles it up. And what that does is it increases the air being sped up in front of the tunnels, and the TLDR gives you more downforce. One way that this splitter does that is it takes, and this is a piece of the splitter, by the way, it takes the splitter and then it just makes it thinner all the way to the end. And you can see what that looks like here. At the edge, it's trailing off, and at the leading edge, it's thick, the trailing edge is thin. This shows that the splitter is essentially giving itself a splitter angle while it's under your car for free. That's just free downforce. While this is fun, and a lot of high-end cars do this, or high-end downforce packages do this, nothing that's really accessible for someone who wants to just drive their car to the track, right? So this is like one big advantage of this kit. And I think this is one of the reasons why I've been able to make more downforce than I would just say a lot of my peers, is because of just like innovations like this. And then my final point on the splitter is that it does allow you to attach attachments. So I will talk about some attachments later on in the series. So that's like the end plates, or why I cut this piece of the splitter out, which is going to be the diffusers or the tunnels. However, it does let you attach splitter pucks, right? These are not the ones that came with it. I think they're like round, but these are ones like I cut this one myself. So encouragement is like you can just make these yourself. And then I CNC machined this one myself because I could. And again, since the bottom is carbon, it wears off every time you touch the ground. It's not made of like Kevlar or something like that, which I wish we would offer as a option if you're watching this video. It just helps protect the bottom. And why would you not want to protect the bottom? I actually did notice some wear on the bottom. So every now and then I just take the splitter pucks off just to see maybe where I'm hitting the ground, because I hit the ground pretty much every track day. So yeah, now I know that, at least the bottom is not protected. The problem with this is it can also catch on stuff, right? So it's not necessarily good. It's probably also not good for the track surface because it possibly destroys it. I don't know how that works, but it protects the splitter, and I think that's mostly what I care about. Oh, and then it makes cool sparks. If you like sparks, I think F1 has made it seem like sparks are really cool. And I do agree, sparks are really cool. You just don't want to make, if you really care about sparks, get titanium pucks, don't get aluminum pucks, or just make the titanium ones yourself. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it on the wing and the splitter. Sorry if this video was too technical, but I think this is kind of information that I want to make available out there, just because the C8s are getting pretty popular now, and people are starting to look at these like, oh wow, they're under 60,000, cheap track toys. So yeah, just FYI on what is possible. Now, you don't have to make any of these choices. You don't have to make all of these choices. So how does this compare to the splitter options that are out there? So the most common option is going to be the Verus Engineering splitter. It's a good splitter. I have no complaints. It just does not produce as much downforce as this guy. You can see that this probably easily produces at least 2x the downforce of the Verus Engineering splitter. And I mean, again, you have to make sacrifices, right? The Verus Engineering splitter is a lot better street driving wise. It just does not make as much downforce. One more thing I want to say is I didn't get the Aero kit In isolation, I got it with a suspension kit. So in the next video, I'm going to talk about the suspension setup and how all of that works. And the reason I did that is because when you're adding this much downforce onto a car, you're going to overwhelm the suspension. You're going to overwhelm a lot of things. Let's start there. But just at least the suspension is going to be like the weakest link. And, you know, no matter if you have like sway bars or stiffer springs, all of that doesn't really come into play when you add like this much Aero. And so I know another person with this exact kit added the downforce setup, and they were like, yo, like my car is literally on the ground, you know, at the end of a brake zone. So I preemptively avoided that by just ordering the suspension setup and the Aero setup at the same time. It hurts financially speaking, and I've had to make small tweaks to like the actual suspension settings or parameters. But I think it's okay now. You know, the car is generally pretty reliable for me as a track car, and I don't have any issues with it. This is a long way to say, in the next video, we're going to talk about the suspension setup to support a downforce package like this, and how to make those decisions and what compromises you have to make there. If you do care about streetability though, I would say, you know, like just maybe don't, or maybe either don't care or care less. I don't know. But like every decision moving forward with this car starts to become more and more unstreetable. But thank you for watching this video. Please like and subscribe again if you find any of this useful, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.